We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not aligned with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. Tonight is speaker night. Our meetings will focus on, I believe Erik is going to be the 45-minute speaker, and he will be speaking about the fourth step, I believe. And then our short speaker is Tony, which will be giving his story. Now, if you would welcome Karen to read the how it works. No,
Lynn.
Karen. Lynn. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. Excuse Karen.
My name is Lynn. I'm an alcoholic. Rarely have I seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed their path. Those who do not regard people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. You have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we can find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We ask his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Thank you.
And now Pat would come up and read 12 traditions.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Twelve traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Okay. We talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map group because we believe it's vital to our recovery. That does not mean to be a home group member. What it does mean to be a home group member. Here is a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference approved pamphlet on the AA group. The AA home group. Traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group they call their home group. This is a group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships. And although all AA members are usually welcome at all groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of home group is still remain the strongest bond between AA members and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group and might also affect AA as a whole, a process that forms the very cornerstone of AA's service structure. As with all group conscious matters, each AA member has one vote, and this ideally is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by drinking, we find in the home group solid, continued support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learn firsthand through the group's workings how to place principles before personalities. In the interest of carrying AA's message, talk about her own group members. A member says, part of my commitment is to show up at my home group meeting and greet newcomers at the door and be available to them, not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I am off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers. If you are interested in making Treasure Map meeting your home group, please see somebody at the desk at the break or after the meeting. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome our 15-minute speaker, Tony.
Good evening, my name is Tony, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 28, 2016. So just got 3 years the other day. He asked me to share on my story, so, what it was like. It was terrible, to be honest with you. At the end it was anyways. In the beginning it was great. It was a social lubricant. It allowed me to be who I wanted to be, personality and everything seemed to come out when I started to drink. Then the best description that I can come up with is basically what I read out of the doctor's opinion, although it may be injurious. You can seldom differentiate the true from the false. In the beginning it seemed to be good, but I started blotting out those consequences that I was getting from it. I loved it right away. So, and I also have an allergy, so that just means that I react differently once I start to drink. I don't know what it's like to tell somebody I'm good. I don't want to have another one. I'm a blackout drinker, so once I start, I can't stop. And once I can't stop, then it's off to the races. I would usually try to get my drinking to start on a Thursday night, so hopefully it tapered down by Sunday so that I could go back to work on Monday. That wasn't always the case. I lost quite a few jobs because I was unable to get sober in time to go back to work. So, I have an allergy. I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol, and I have problems other than alcohol that tend to come out once I start to drink. I come to AA because I found that once the spiritual malady was subsided, that I no longer have those same problems anymore. So I tried doing all the geographical cures, all the stuff that it talks about in the book, to take a trip, not to take a trip. I related with all of that, and then some. There was quite a bit more that I tried. Where I drank, what I drank, who I drank with. I changed it all, and it never seemed to change because no matter where I was, there. No matter where I went, there I was. What happened? So, as I kept drinking, I got lonelier and lonelier. No matter how many people were around me or what I had to do, I couldn't seem to get it to work like it used to. So I kept going at it, and then I thought I was just going to go on to the bitter end. I was drinking every day. I was doing other stuff every day. I was unable to get it together. I would wake up, tell myself I'm not going to do this today. By the end of the day, I was back at it again. And that's the way it went for quite a while. I was in trouble most of my life, so I had to try to keep it together, to see parole officers and probation officers, and then I finally got it together long enough where they let me go, and I went out and I tied on a really good one, and I remember laying in a hotel room because I was living in a hotel room at the time, and I was like, this isn't working. There's no resemblance of a good time that happened in the last 2 weeks. So why do I keep doing this? And then I proceeded to get up and to get loaded again. So I passed out that night, and I woke up and I called the treatment center, Keystone. At the time, I had a job. I was about to lose it because I couldn't show up for work anymore. But I still had a job and I had insurance, so I called the treatment center, and they said, how about you come in tomorrow? I said, well, I'm not out of stuff yet. So how about maybe, and they're like, no. Either you come in tomorrow or you're not going to come in at all. And, my sobriety started with a prayer, and it was, God, I could use a little help. I didn't know what that help was going to be. I didn't know that I was going to stay sober longer than 30 days, to be honest with you. I had no intention. I didn't understand how 12 steps that didn't really have anything to do with drinking or doing drugs was going to get me to be completely abstinent from everything. But I did know that I wanted to stop. So once I wanted to stop, that's when I became a member, right? So I went to treatment. I listened to what they had to say, and I followed the directions. I got out. I got a home group. I got a service commitment. I got a sponsor, and I worked the 12 steps. I did that, and it wasn't all roses in the beginning. It was tough. There was definitely some challenges. But in that first year, once I got to making the amends, that's when it all changed. That's when it went full circle. I've lost friends in sobriety. I've broken up with girlfriends in sobriety. I've done all that kind of stuff, and I haven't had to go back out. And I don't have any defense against the first drink. So that means I have found something that works. And, I can't explain why or how. It's just that, I took actions I didn't believe in, and I got results I can't deny. So when I did the 9th step and started making amends, that's when the crazy town in my head kind of quit. So I made it through. It was on the first Christmas, so I made it through Christmas, and that has been like a notorious hard time for me. I have partial custody of partial visitation of my daughter, and usually I have to give her back around Christmas, and then I usually go out and get loaded and end up in detox, and it's pretty well established what happens. But I made amends to my daughter and to my family members that were coming into town, and to be honest with you, I was completely terrified, but I was willing to do whatever it took to stay sober. So I made those amends, and some of the people that I went to treatment with and some of the people that I was in the program with didn't make it. They didn't stay sober, but I did, and it wasn't a struggle. I had to tell myself I was worried about making those amends. So, but at the end of it, I stayed sober because I worked the 12 steps. And, I went from being homeless in my 20s and all that good stuff to I'm a homeowner. I got a bunch of stuff that I have more than I need. And, it says in the big book that, financial security precedes spiritual growth. So I said that backwards, but anyways, it's on page 127. But, I'm just grateful for this. Like I said, I have a home group and I'm active in service. So, right now I am the DCM for District 5. I'm the chairman for my home group. And the guy that kind of got me to do the service part of it, he told me that if I did service work, I would stay sober. And he has not, he wasn't lying. So, I've stayed sober this far, and I do it because I'm grateful for what I have today. And that's it. I don't do it because let's be honest, it's pretty boring, but it's kept me sober, and I'm pretty grateful for what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me today. Like it says in the doctor's opinion, the alcoholic life is the only one I knew. I started drinking when I was 12, so and I loved it, and I did it every chance I got. And even when they locked me up, it didn't stop me from doing it. So I'm grateful for what I have today, and that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Tony. And now we'll take a 10-minute break. And if you smoke, please go outside. I believe there's a can out there for your butts as well. Thank you.
Car seat that Mark's giving to me. Done for pre-tax.
Never mind. I'm not here. This doesn't exist. I got it. Yeah. I know when you get done, there's not going to be a dry eye in the house, is there?
Oh, I did, or they'll all just be slitting their wrists. Whatever, it'll be something.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, should we get started? It is, hey, it is, I have a few announcements to make for our second speaker here. Concepts of the West is 2019 Weekend of Study, Discussion, and Fellowship, December 13th and 14th at Lake Ponset, Camp Arlington, South Dakota. There are flyers over there. And then Welcome to Sturgis Friends Group AA, which is a rally which is happening currently, if anybody happens to be going out there. And then, of course, we also have the International Convention in Detroit, which will be happening next year, July 2nd through the 5th. Again, there are brochures over on the table. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our long speaker, Erik, who is going to speak about the fourth step.
Well, good evening. My name is Erik, and I'm an alcoholic. It's just always good to be back here at the Treasure Map. I just came off the road. It's been a while since I've been here. And a couple of things I've noticed is the huge lack of presence behind that table of Randy. I love that man. And the second thing is, Scotty, your coffee hadn't gotten any better. I mean, holy crap. I had a cup of that, so if I start to levitate, you'll know, blame Scott. But again, I just come off the road business. It's interesting when you're out there, and I travel quite a bit for my work, and I represent a regional and local treatment interest. And we tried something different up in Minnesota this week, which was just hilarious. They had a new health fair part of a farm show, which made sense. You know, farmers drink a bit, I think. I'm not a farmer, but I would assume. And so we had a booth set up, and we found out it's usually I kind of case the joint and see who our neighbors are, you know, and being a good neighbor. But this week, our neighbors were the people pushing for the legalization of marijuana, which, you know, God help them. I mean, I dabbled a bit in marijuana, about 17 years a day, every day, but just a little. Had a small habit. And but they brought in this big marijuana plant that was the size of my wife's patio plants, you know, and it was like right here over my booth. And it was very interesting. They seemed very confident early on in the proceedings until they realized what we were representing. And we didn't have to say anything. And I know that in AA deal, you know, we're a program here of attraction. Well, in the business world, we're out promoting. There's a difference, big difference. And they really were not liking what we were promoting. And in fact, the people would beeline into that tent to come to the Marahoochee booth, you know, to hum a little tune of the Hashish Salesman. I used to do that. And then they would, inevitably, they would kind of step around and notice their surroundings and realize who we were and what we represented. And immediately there was a reaction. And it was, I've never seen people walk down aisles in a farm show getting as far away as they could from us. So we had this line of everybody in there, woo, you know, and stop at the ooh, and it's like, you know, I don't have any problem. They all just have that immediate look like, you're judging me. No, I'm not. You're just an idiot. But so that was my early part of the week. And then the other thing today, you know, in our interests, I met with, for a program we're putting on with some of the drug stuff going on is just insidious. out there, what people are getting into, kids. And so I met with the head of the DEA based out of Omaha in the police chief's office in Sioux City, of which I went for several years planning on an evening out. Sioux City. And it invariably turned into like a 4 or 5 day odyssey because I ended up in their jail and then needing, representation, judges. I don't know if you ever had that about a town, but Sioux City has always had this black cloud. I never went there and escaped unscathed, ever. Until today, I escaped. And I remember telling them, I said, I really, the real thing takeaway for me from this meeting is I'm walking out. I don't need a lawyer. Certain freedoms, we laughed a little bit. I don't know if they understood what I was talking about. But the police chief did tell me when he left that they have upgraded the jail in Sioux City. So if I ever come back, it's going to be a little better experience. I guess it was rough, but I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks to Mike. Mike and I go way back to the beginning for him. My sobriety dates back April 4th of 1987. I'm just so grateful every day. I think the longer I'm around in this deal, the simpler it becomes and the more deep it becomes. It's the more clarity that I think at times I see, both in the problem and in the solution that we share here and how powerful it really is. If you're new here tonight, welcome. If you're new here tonight and you're wondering how it is that a guy or guys or individuals that we can be sitting around here and obviously we're sober or clean and we seem to be enjoying life, and you've never quite put those two things together, being sober and enjoying life. I hadn't prior to AA. You're in the right place. And what we're going to talk about tonight is one of the tools that AA has given all of us through this book and the instructions that go with these tools, a spiritual step. I've heard this in meetings, there's a spiritual part of AA. I'm still trying to figure out what they mean, because there isn't a step in this book, in my experience, that isn't spiritual in nature. Inventory, or step 4, a moral inventory, is an extremely spiritual endeavor. It may not seem like it, but it is. And I think Bill, in his commentary on the 12 and Tell, where he spoke about the power of inventory, and when practiced on a regular basis, what it can bring for stability to an individual's life. And then he talked about the power of prayer on a regular basis, how it can change lives. But he said when they're interwoven, when they're used as tools together, he used the term unshakable foundation for living. And that's been my experience. Father Rock, who I got to work with back in the 80s when we did our inventory process, I did it with Father Rock over a series of weeks. I remember him telling me that every good inventory, when done according to the instructions that this book lays out, will ultimately lead to prayer. A prayer of thanksgiving in some ways, that maybe for the first time in my life I've got an opportunity to live differently. And also the prayer of hope that comes with that maybe for the first time that I can tap into a process, a group of people, principles that actually unleash the power in my life to actually be what I want to be. It's an amazing process, this inventory process. And if you're new here, it may seem very scary, as it does for all of us the first time through. But the inventory tool is something that has served me well since the day I implemented it in my life. Continue to implement it in my life. It is a tool to not only identify, but to clear away things to allow this power to work through me and in me. And the 4th step is really our first attempt at doing that. The instructions are in this book. They begin on page 64. There's really 3 areas that they cover here. And the first thing I want to say is I did an inventory in the treatment facility that I crash landed in back in 1986. That inventory's format was much different than what is outlined in this big book. And I think many of us that have went to various treatment programs, they talk about a 4-step inventory that's quite a bit different than what this outline is. What those have tended to be, and the things I experienced before Alcoholics Anonymous and these instructions with the sponsor, was more of an immoral inventory. Where if you look at the instructions here, it's called a searching and fearless moral inventory. A completely different focus. And what they involved was, number 1, a list of all my sins, as Bill talked about in his commentary, the 7 deadly. Everything I'd done since birth that was against some rule or standard, either my own or society's, I was supposed to chronologically identify in that inventory process. The other thing that was much different is that, the big book is very clear about going back through our life, from present back, where those inventories started me off at birth. Birth to 3 years old, where did I mess up? 3 to 5. And I remember as I went through that, because I don't know about the rest of you, I grew up in a home to where I think I used that excuse that I didn't get what I needed when I needed it, that there was problems in my home that spilled down on me. Ultimately, what I had lived my entire life before AA is there was still this part of being a victim in my life. I did things because that happened. I was this way because that happened to me. I always had an excuse. I could rationalize. If you knew what I experienced, you would think differently about the way I'm acting now. That victim mentality that permeated my DNA. And I'm just telling you, there's no damn way that I can remain in that victim state and recover. No way. Many of us have been victims. I've heard your stories. I've been a victim. But to remain in that mode is to remain sick. I'm just telling you. I have to get point, because the ultimate thing about victims like me that keep that perpetual reasoning and rationalization is that I become a perpetrator. That's what happens to every victim. Where it usually fell for me is because I was so angry at Scott over a long period of time, I could not deal with whatever Scott had done with me, I took it out on him. And when I started to look at this inventory, what I found is that all my retribution in my life fell on people that had no idea what was coming their way. And I made a laundry list of individuals that were victimized by me, by being stuck in perpetual victim stance. So at some point, what I love about this inventory thing is that we're at war. And there's a recognition that we've been at war with everything around us in this addiction thing. And I'm no exception to that. Every relationship of import in my life prior to coming in AA was in shambles when I arrived here. It's trying to sift through this idea of where my side of the street begins and ends, what I'm responsible for. And I don't know about you, I need guidance in order to get to the bottom of that. And thank God they wrote instructions down in here. It's a moral inventory. The other thing that I think that I became and have become acutely aware of is that it isn't the standards that were placed before me, I thought unfairly or unrightly or unjustly, that really drove me crazy in my life. It was that I didn't live up to my own damn standards. That I fell short of something inside of me all the time. I think that it is, I hear a lot in AA again about, acceptance is the answer. Not in my case. It was the unacceptability of living like I lived. I could no longer rationalize it away. That drove me to my knees. That allowed this God of this program, things that I found here, to actually have a chance to work in my life. There's 3 areas they outline in here, in this moral inventory. And they all have 4 columns associated with it. It's a simple process. We're all smart enough in this room to read it with guidance with a sponsor and do this process. I used a format that was developed by Joe and Charlie the first time I did it according to this, because it was a simplified process, and I believe those sheets are available online. But you can do it as well with a sheet of paper, because I've done them there in a pinch. Same 4 columns, same 3 areas: resentments, fears, sexuality or sex conduct. And it's amazing to me when I really looked at this the first time, is why those 3? I could understand the resentment part. I kind of tend to be a resentment magnet. Don't know about you, maybe you haven't suffered from that. But I have a hard time, and have had a hard time letting go. But I never knew why. I just knew that I did. I couldn't have recognized fear in my life because I had covered it up so much over my life, trying to pretend or become that actor that they talk about in this book. And you don't live the way I lived, and without having that stage image. So my nickname all the way through high school was Wild Man, because it would appear on the outside I was afraid of nothing. Didn't realize that, honest to God, fear has been calling the shots. I mean, it just permeated every part of myself. And then sexuality. It wasn't hard for me to see that there was wreckage there. Didn't know why. Didn't know why that when I found something that seemed to be, and I think it's other than the action of alcohol, it's probably the closest thing to a spiritual experience that isn't. The sex. And that moments and that sharing of intimacy and stuff, it's where I feel connected for the first time to something bigger than myself, whatever it is that's going on. But why did it always run like sand through my hands? Why did people that I really genuinely cared for, why did I screw it up again and again and again? Why did I become so controlling when I hated being controlled? Why? Never could connect the dots, other than I knew when it was coming. Every relationship had a shelf life. It was just a matter of time before I was going to screw it up one more time. Now, I can sit and give you an immoral inventory of all the things I've done. A thief, a liar, an adulteress, whatever it is, and still not be able to connect the dots on what makes me do the things I do. What is going on under here that creates a life that where sobriety is so uncomfortable that I have to drink my way out of every situation? Because that's the story of my life. It's that dot connecting. And that's what I found for the first time, leading toward freedom. As it says, this inventory and the information in it is the key to our future. How can that be? It's a pile of garbage and wreckage. Yet it's the key. And I think it's the understanding of how we actually break this down. We go back through our lives. But column 1, and you hear this in AA all the time, we don't judge other people here. Bull crap. Oh crap, you can't do a 4-step. Not judging other people. The problem is that's where we stop, okay, most of us. Judgment, I mean, the first 2 columns, who we're angry at in resentment. The second column is, what did they do? I took that inventory weekly. Drunk. And I used the bartender usually as my 5th-step guy. I could tell you, you look a little rough tonight, Scotty. What's going on? Well, she did this. My boss, he did that, right? And then as we drank, oh man, here, have another one. Have another one. I did the first 2 columns of the inventory all the time before I ever come to AA. That's the easy part. But where it says in this book, where it says to conclude that other people were wrong and that we were victims, was as far as most of us ever got. We've never taken a personal inventory. So the really good part about the 4-step, if you haven't done one, is you get permission to actually take other people's inventory. It's a beautiful process. The first 2 columns. I mean, I don't know about you, the first time I went through the 4-step, other than re-feeling them, that situation, I mean, I was building a case here on why it is that I've done. I mean, it's obvious. I've been a victim. Until we get to column 3 and column 4. I love what AA does is it ties as we move from left to right across the columns. And again, I think the other thing that's really important is that we work these columns up and down. We don't work it across. It's more of that autobiography, and I can get really stuck, especially when I begin with these resentments that are acutely painful. It's so we just ransack and go back as far as we can in column 1 before we go to column 2. But when I started to look at this, as I realized it isn't just Scott that's driving me nuts. It's what Scott does that drives me nuts. It really isn't Scott, because I don't know about the rest of you. I had the same things kind of repeat. So it was the same things going on. It was just different actors. So then it was Dan doing the same shit that Scott was doing. There's a pattern. But what I never understood is columns 3, where it starts to tie that to what really, it isn't even what Scott did, it's how it affects me. It's what really is causing a problem. It's these instincts I was introduced that were hardwired with these things for society, for security, the column 3. And what I started to see as I'm going down that list and checking is that it seemed like anytime my security was threatened, I had an immediate reaction. Insecurity in 2 areas. I don't like and still don't like people messing with my stuff out here. Don't like it. Come near it, I got like fences built. I build walls, I lock doors, I do all kinds of stuff to keep you away from my stuff. I still do that. It's crazy. If 1 lock's good, 2 locks is better. Okay? Always double checking. I'm just wired that way. But what I really don't like is when you mess with stuff in here. I don't like that. Whenever Scott is doing threatens my security in here, makes me look bad, triggers whatever it is. I feel like I'm going to lose something. I have an immediate fight or flight reaction. Always have, didn't know it. And then when it comes to sexuality and how that's threatened, because sexuality to me was so tied into this, not even self-esteem, but just my worth. Honest to God, as long as she would still go out with me, I must be somewhat okay. This is how I kind of thought. I must still have it. Right, Dan? Yeah, he laughs at me. These instincts, and I started seeing regular check marks, and I'm going, holy crap, what does this mean? I mean, why am I so security-based? Why am I so ambition-based? Why is it that anybody comes between that, what I think I want or deserve, if they get in the way of that, immediately I have a fight or flight? I started to see this stuff. Couldn't figure it all out, just started seeing patterns. And then they went to the fourth column. And that's where I understand what the true enemy is. It seemed like in my life, and I don't know about you, but prior to AA, it says we're at conflict with almost anyone and anything. We're at conflict. We're at war. And I always thought it was because of guys like Scott. Well, again, I hope you don't mind. I've never been at war with you, but you're a perfect target. Your coffee, you still need to take a class though, brother. That's some bad coffee. Is that literally what I started to see is where I've really been at war most of my life is in here. And up here, I've been at war with myself. Didn't even realize it. The real enemy isn't been out here, even though it seemed like it. What it really has been revealed to me through this inventory is that the enemy looks me back in the mirror every morning when I get up. That's been the truth. There's some part of me that's been trying to take me out. I think that is what I identify today as the ism of alcoholism, the I, self, and the me. Whatever that is, however you look at it, there's just a part of me that does things that I don't want to do. And there's another part of me that doesn't want to do the things I need to do. I'm at constant conflict. Or if I want to be moral if I want to be philosophically comfort, as the big book says, my real problem all my life has been a lack of power, and I never knew it. Even if I would have wanted to do things, I didn't have the power to. All this began to be revealed to me in this inventory. And I started looking at these things they call defects of character, the real things that are trying to take us out. It's not Jack Daniels. I always thought, well, you come to A&A, alcohol's killing you. You put the plug in the jug, you'll be fine. It'll get better. Not my experience. I put the plug in the jug, I get crazy. Real crazy. It's all the things about alcoholism. The I, self, and me get activated in there. And unless I can find the ease and comfort that I can find through trying to work these principles, I will by default try to find it in what's always worked, if it even for a few seconds. And that's a drink. So I got into those, and what I really started seeing, I didn't like. And this is where I moved from taking your inventory to mine. And I started to see the selfishness in my life. It was always about me. I had these revelations when I'm looking at this, and I'm mad at Scott because he had done this. And then I looked down later, and I'm mad at them because they got mad at me because I'd done exactly what Scott did. I started to see the hypocrisy of that. I remember I was struggling with a gal I came into AA with, and we both then got sober shortly after, and for about 6 to 7, 8 months. It was probably up until that time, it was the best my life had ever been with another human being. We had plans to get married. I'd been with her 5 years prior to coming in here. Man, it just felt like we were back on that deal. And then she decided to go back out. Crushed me. It got so bad I had to go to Al-Anon for 2 years. That's bad, You think these people are rough in here. You try to go letting them, black belt Al-Anons get a hold of you. And I remember I was told even at that point by my sponsor that when I get up in the morning, when I'm doing my 11th step, and I begin this process that, I've got this immediate thing as I'm obsessed about her. What's she out doing? I wonder where she is tonight. I can't believe that we had everything here. We had it all. I know she loved me. Why is she out? And I would write down on that list, I'm resentful at her. Why? Because she went back to drink. How does it affect me? Every area of instincts are activated. What is my defect? I get to the fourth column and I couldn't see anything. I mean, I loved her. I supported her. I didn't go back out. We had a commitment. I couldn't see anything. And I'd say a prayer. My sponsor said if it didn't leave, talk to him about it at the meeting. Otherwise, I'd pray the 7-step prayer for that to be removed. And I did that every day for several weeks. Had to do that inventory every damn morning. I didn't use Joe and Charlie sheets to do that. I just took out a piece of paper and put 4 columns down. It's a good tool if you ever find yourself waking up and your defects have gotten up an hour before you did. It's a great tool. So I have to go make an amends. I'm in the 9th step at this point, and it's a gal that, unbeknownst to her, she didn't know what she was getting into. And we went out for almost 4 years prior to this relationship that was driving me crazy. And I remember her leaving me because, well, number one, she was sane. And she was not ready to settle for what was going on in our relationship. And I went to make amends with her. And I remember as we talked about this idea of her having to leave, and there was this process. She didn't forgive me. I said, what can I do to make this right? Stay the hell away from me. That was her answer. But as it says in this book, I was there, had done the work and the footwork, and there was still a sense of relief that came because I was there trying to do my part. It wasn't until 3 years later that I ran into her, and after 12-stepping her brother, that she came to me. She says, I understand now what you were trying to do, and I want you to know I understand now. But we still got to love each other at a distance because she got a family now. I understand that. But I got done with that amends, and the next morning I wake up. I'm still thinking about girl number B. Resentful. Why? She stopped drinking. She was drunk last night. Saw her. Wasn't good. Instincts. Get to column 4. Before that, I never could find anything in column 4. All of a sudden, it hit me. The very thing I was back last night asking this other gal for, not for forgiveness, but to try to put to bed and put to rest, or what can I do to make her right, was the exact thing she was doing to me, this gal. And I went to that first column and I checked selfish. I'll never forget the impact of that. And thank God for the Al-Anons that helped get me to that point. I had an immediate spiritual release at that moment when I could identify my own selfishness. What was really killing me wasn't the fact that she was out there. It's that the hypocrisy in my life kills me. I can't stand it. The selfishness in my life, as it says in here, is what's really trying to kill me. I saw that. I said the prayer. It was interesting. She didn't sober up for 10 years. 10 years. And I remember those battle axe Al-Anons telling me, you're either going to have to suck it up, quit whining, and stick it out, or you're going to have to let go, because standing where you're standing ain't good. I had to let her go. Last time I saw her was maybe 6 years ago. She's got 3 or 4 kids doing great. This is the power of inventory, is trying to connect the dots on why it is that I feel like I feel today. Why is it that I continue on this rat wheel? And the 4th step isn't enough in itself, because it says in there a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient. But it's the blueprint that I've carried every time into a sponsor meeting, or to my spiritual advisors, or to Father Rock, the ministers, the people that I trust to open my soul to, of where we have really taken a look and we've told the story behind these little boxes where I've made little admissions. I am thoroughly convinced today that defects of character are the true enemy in my life, and there's only 4. Why it is that it's important that we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right things. Why that tool is as spiritual as any tool in this box that we have within this big book. Why it's so important, I don't know, but I would call my sponsor. I say, how you doing? I got a resentment. He said, have you written it down? I'd say, no. He'd say, well, then call me when you have clicked. Because it says right in there, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So I'd write them down. I'd do my 4 columns. I'd call him back. He'd say, all right, now, what do we got? Every time it's the same things. It's the same enemy. It's not Scott. Not even what Scott's doing. It's called life and my inability to deal with it on life's term without God's help. To lack the power to love like I want to love. Oh my God. Oh my God. The stuff I'm still capable of with going on 33 years of bliss recovery in this deal. And I've worked this thing hard. I worked it hard. The things that come into my head even surprise me. It's just like, what? Where the hell does that come from? And I can always tell when it's maybe a good idea. I just have learned to pause when agitated or doubtful, and I call someone I trust, and I say, well, what are you doing? Well, I was just thinking. And this kind of came to my head, and I usually wait. And if they say things like, that sounds pretty cool, then I know, well, maybe it's not that crazy. But if they say things like, what? Or, we should maybe take a look at that, I still got this thing to where I can't completely, especially when it comes to new situations, new opportunities, something new in life, a new challenge. My default setting most times is probably not where it needs to be. I need to take a look at it. I need to share it. I need to pray. It's an amazing process that what has allowed me to kind of remain clean in here. I don't know about the rest of you sit here tonight. What's the greatest gift of sobriety? We're on the internet some, and I especially love the family stuff that comes through. All the garbage is out there, but there's some recovery kind of stuff that I just view. I don't throw myself out there much because I just don't trust social media. But I see things every once in a while that really make sense. And pictures, they say, are worth 1,000 words. What is it that really makes this all so worthwhile? Is it the fact that I stayed out of jail since I come in here? It's beneficial. I've not been in a physical altercation since I came in here there was a time in my life where that was something I hung my hat on. There's some benefit. The idea that, I pay bills. I don't have bill collectors looking for me. So there's some benefits in that. Sleep in the same bed every night. Yeah. There's some benefit in that. The idea I have stuff. I know our young guy over here said you got some stuff now. I'm getting to the age now I got too much damn stuff. I'm looking to get rid of some if you're still looking to accumulate. Is it the stuff? For a while it was, but that stuff really doesn't. It's all malleable. What is it that makes this so precious that I've dedicated almost 33 years of my life to try to give away? What is it? I saw this, I don't even know how to pronounce it right, whatever the heck it is. It's MEM something ES, Memsies. I always screw it up. My boy tells me I'm wrong. And it was a man ordinary man. It's a picture. He's leaning over. He's got maybe a 2-year-old, 3-year-old boy hugging him. It's just a picture. And it says, my secret is simple. I got sober. I don't know why that hit me so hard. But for me, that explains why this is so perfect in an imperfect way. Of why it is we're doing these silly things that just don't seem to, at the time, I trusting the guidance of a sponsor, but I really don't know how this is going to change anything in a real way. I don't know that. I'm trying to have faith, but I don't really know. Writing this stuff down is going to change what? Going through this process, sharing it with somebody, how is that going to change a damn thing? Is there a God? Is that real or just a ruse? All these things that plagued me walking every step of the way through this process. This idea of making amends? Are you kidding me? Paying back? Really? Helping other people? The way of living? Drastic proposals for a guy that's hardwired like me, until I look at what's really important. And it's the relationships, the depth of the relationships. The connection that I always wanted. And it was always just outside my reach. Or if I got it, hold on to it too tight that you strangle it. It's that relationship with you, with my brothers, my sisters in this walk. God, I love you. With the newcomer, God, I hope for you. You don't have to live like an animal. You don't have to live unfulfilled. You're sitting in the middle of paradise. It's right here. It's all around you, this power. If you only let it in. Jim Ryan, who was a mountain in my life, 12-step monster, dragged me along. My first 2-3 years, that's all I did at night. We went on 12 steps when we weren't doing meetings. They didn't let me 12-step. They just drug my ass along. They weren't stupid. But I watched that man pluck. He's a rag picker. Dan knows what I mean. He plucked people out of places all the time. Gave them a new life. Gave them hope. Gave them AA's principles. They recreated their life. I remember going to his 50th sobriety birthday, and there was almost every state in the union in that little building in Yankton, people that he touched all over the country. Jim stood up there, and you think that, he's big in AA and he's known. There was never anything big about Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan was love. And he stood up in front. He said, if there's just one thing, God, that you can just gift me to continue, and that's to reach the new people. That was his prayer. To give this thing away, this precious thing that's, if we could bottle this stuff up, seriously, if I could figure out a way to pull what has been placed inside of me through this and put it into a bottle so that you could just drink it, you new people, and understand what it is, you'd want it more than your than life itself. It's the gift of love. It's the gift of life. It's the gift of relationship. All that starts by these silly things, these spiritual principles. And it really, for me, it began with the house cleaning after the decision I made in third step to go through with this program with the sponsor. It's been the key to my future. I got a wife at home. Candy, if you're listening, I love you. It feels so good to love somebody so much and actually believe that I have a chance to show that on a consistent basis. I don't have to pull the structure down. I used to. It was inevitable that I can be a partner, that I can set aside my own desires. And any of you have been married for a while as a man, you know that that's required if you want to stay married. You know, a partnership, most beautiful thing. And I remember coming out of my mouth, well, that marriage is just really a piece of paper. To my former self, I say bullshit. It's the greatest union I've ever experienced of trying to work through this thing called life and have a partner. I was so full of crap. Probably still am. Check back in 10 years. If I'm still here, I'll think that the guy standing here tonight is probably full of crap in some areas. The other thing is being a dad. Oh. Never thought that was going to happen. I was 47 years old when I finally became a pop. And you know what the greatest gift is that I had given that dream up because I knew that there was decisions I had made based in my life, either on by self or by choice. And I was okay with that. Like so many things in AA, when I finally give it up and I'm okay with that, it comes back tenfold. It's just gifted to me. I got a 12-year-old and 10-year-old boys. Drive my wife and I absolutely stone cold crazy. They're from Pluto. Could whole nother channel. I don't know where all this runs. There's highways, something. But this thing called love, it's tapping into some well. I don't know where it begins. I have an idea that that's this power that we're talking about trying to get back with or get tapped into. But it's a whole different channel. It's a different love than I have for my wife. It's a different love and a channel that I have for you and my brothers and my friends. But it is so deep and so pure that I think I understand for the first time what it is to have a Father in heaven. I mean, truly, have a small glimpse of the love that our Father has for each and every one of his kids. Because I cannot tell you. I mean, at times, I was diagnosed as a sociopath, for Pete's sake. I remember this shrink telling me, he said, guys like you don't recover with his little finger. He was a little sawed-off peckerhead psychiatrist guy I hadn't seen. I did one of them dot things, MMPIs. Are you afraid of doorknobs? Yes or no? You ever do those? Okay. Well, I always wanted the third column. Well, it depends who's behind that door. I didn't like their tests. It was either or, kind of thing. Where's the third column? It depends. I was always depends. If the FBI's behind that door, then damn right I'm afraid of doorknobs. He says, guys like you don't recover. He says, the way you're gridded out, he said, you're in the class with Charles Manson. Now, I don't know if you know who Charles Manson is, but that wasn't a compliment. Though Charlie did have a little ranch and some fun for a while, I think that maybe would have been appealing. But what happened after, not good. He said, you would feel no more taking a human life than a normal person stepping on an ant in the sidewalk. Well, he told me. He said, people like you don't recover. And I said, you've got this wrong, Doc. That's not me. And he said, well, how do you know that that's not you? And I said, because if that was true, any sawed-off peckerhead like you would have said something like that to me in this room, right now I'd have your throat in my hands and you would be dead. Which made him scribble some more stuff in his book. Spiritual awakening is the result of these steps, a spiritual experience that is the solution for what has ailed me all my life and what is promised and guaranteed if we work these steps according to the instructions 10 times out of 10. Prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, they knew, Dr. Jung knew this, but the best he could say is, I don't know how to reproduce it. Just put yourself in the best position you can and hope the lightning of God hits you. We have a guarantee. And I've seen it happen every time it's worked. It's happened for me. I'm not the same man that I was yesterday. I'm not the same man I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same man I was 20 years ago. This thing is a continual deal of uncover, discover, discard. Uncover, discover, discard. Trust God, clean house, help others. Uncover, discover, discard. And it isn't this mundane thing. I don't want you to get stuck that we're constantly in this state of therapy, because that's couldn't be farther from the truth. It's the spontaneity, to being spontaneous to life, to acting instead of reacting is one of the greatest gifts of living, according to these principles. To not be the actor. I'm the same. My wife says this. I remember we went to Godhead and we were doing some premarital stuff. I don't know if you guys did that. You know, they try to make sure all your ducks are in a row. Doesn't help, but you know, you do it anyway, right? It does help. But he says, what's your husband's greatest gift? And she says, he's consistent. Day in and day out, he's like a rock. Doesn't matter where we're at here or there, he's the same. I thought, well, that's pretty good. She said, he asked, what's his biggest weakness? She says that he's the same here, there. I said, honey, you knew what you were getting into. When she looks at me with those eyes like, what planet are you from? It's, honey, I mean, you knew this going in. I'm not right. I'm really not right. I might have done some things permanently, some damage. Being a papa, though, is the greatest gift that's ever been given me, the greatest responsibility I have ever felt, and the greatest privilege. My 12-year-old is, what's been so awesome, and I know I got to finish here, but is that I've been present as a father. I've been there, and I've gotten knee deep and dirty. In fact, I probably, honey, if you're listening, I still know that I changed way more diapers than you ever did. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to you guys, because there's this kind of new thing, you know, where it's all shared. But I'm a little bit older, if you haven't noticed. That's one bad thing about staying sober long as you get old, is that literally, for me, that wasn't what happened. I mean, my father, I remember talking to him, so what was it like with all my brothers and sisters born? He said, well, you just drive up to the hospital, say, we'll see you in 2 days, drop my mother off, and they drive off. And I said, so how many diapers did you ever change? Diapers? Are you kidding me? Okay, so I changed diapers. But even more than that, I was there, and I watched their development. And literally, it just amazes to me, because it's almost like my relationship with God. It's almost parallels this in my development, coming into where I sit. And I have watched from one day to the next where almost literally a switches went on and there's a different young man in front of me than was day prior. I've seen it. Amazing to watch that. Again, all the time loving. But my 12-year-old has experienced that switch in the last few weeks, and it's like, who are you? What happened? He all of a sudden, where I don't know if most of you got these young folks, and he's into sports heavy. He's now in 6th grade. He's 6'1". And, he's got like a pretty good sports opportunity in front of him. I love that. I haven't pushed him toward it. Love watching it. Dan knows, he's seen him. I mean, he's like this big dorky kid. Some people think he's retarded because he looks like he's about 16, 17. Then he opens his mouth. Yeah, and it's like, oh my God, you got a retarded kid. No, he's just 12. He's just where he's at. But I always had to remind him with sports. You got this, you got that. His mother would be on him. You're supposed to run. Constant reminder. It's like talking to a wall. It's like, kid. All of a sudden this year, something happened. All of a sudden I looked and I thought, well, where's the kid at? He's out running.